Oh hey, congratulations, you won! You don't remember? You won our raffle. Your winning ticket entitles you to an all-expense-paid round trip to any video game location that you can think of. We've got beautiful beaches, picturesque plateaus, the metropolis of many a megalopolis, fantastical forests, cryptic cathedrals, and... What? A swamp? You want to go to a swamp? No. There's no problem. Just give me a moment. Yeah, they chose the swamp. I know it smells like ass poop. I don't know. Yes, I'm sure that they chose it. Just you really want to go though, right? You're not just joking? Okay, just double checking. There's no problem. Yeah, I don't fucking know what's up, man. They still want to go. Dude, no, I don't know transport. No, malaria isn't exclusive to Africa. What the fuck? So here we are in the swamp. It's sticky, stinky. Out of all the places that I could possibly be, this has got to be at the very bottom, second to last on the list. Now, not all video game swamps are created equal, but the ones that I have beef with all have a few common characteristics, a few areas where I think that they could be improved a lot. But see, it can get complicated right off the bat, right? Because first and foremost, context matters here. The two swamps that I hate the most are the ones in Valheim and Ark. Survival games where dying can set you back hours. Awesome, yeah, thank you, perfect, just what I need, yeah, poison me more, thank you, that's fucking perfect. And where the enemies are randomized and pretty unpredictable. Compare that to something like Farron's Swamp in Dark Souls 3 and it's night and day. One is a casserole of death that delights in your torment and the other is... Well, I guess they're pretty similar actually, but one was specifically designed to do it. Swamps definitely have their place in games, and I don't want to say that they're all bad. They're a challenging place to survive in, and so of course, it's common to see them added to tons of environments. I think swamps offer a certain kind of maniacal freedom for designers. Because in a land full of mud and rot and filth, you can come up with anything you want. Throw it down for me to fight and I'll be like, yeah, this makes sense here. The uncomfortable, weird nature of a swamp opens up the door for insane enemy designs, and I think that's where they really shine. The standouts for me are the Witches of Crookback Bog in Witcher 3. Like, what the fuck is that? I even made a little sketch of Wispis a couple years ago because I loved her design so much, but now it's weirdly racist, so that sucks. And just as a bonus side note pertaining to Wispis, she asks for ears as sacrifices specifically because she can string them together and she leaves them all over Crookback Bog so that she can listen through them. Using old magic, she's able to use those ears to hear everything going on in her territory. As soon as you cross in, the crones will know, not because of some crystal ball shit, but because they're listening through the strings of peasant ears. I think this kind of like twisted, tormented design really only has its place in a swamp or a bog. Mud everywhere, gnarled trees above, there's moss and fungus and creepies and crawlies. It's just the perfect setting if you want to make somebody mess their trousers. There's just a degree of uncertainty in a swamp, and it never feels like you're completely safe. Like if I'm walking in a normal forest, I'd be fine, leaning up against a mossy rock or a tree. I could trust a lichen or a mushroom, but in a swamp, absolutely fuck all of the above. I don't know what kind of demon slime that moss is made of. Is that a lichen or is it a goddamn scab? And I know for sure that those mushrooms are full of poison. Don't mind this, it's just Halloween night. But poison. Let's talk about that for a second. It's not abnormal for whatever weird, twisted creature crawls out of the swamp to spew poison out of its goopy gob or some kind of cloacal valve. But poison can be handled in a few different ways. Like, again, in Dark Souls 3, we will get to a bunch of different games, I promise. But going back to Farron's Swamp, you're basically playing the floor is poopy to avoid getting poisoned. And the first time I played through it, I was like, oh shit, oh god, oh geez, this is terrible. But then you realize that it barely does any damage and really just serves to slow you down and drive you insane with the sizzle sound. But when you ramp up that poison damage, like in the Profane Capital later on, then it becomes an issue. And this is what I wish more swampy areas looked like. Make the environment able to deal a shitload of poison damage and then put cooler creatures inside of that area for people to fight. Instead of adding enemies that deal poison damage, some of which are just a waste of time for everyone involved, throw down some demented creatures in there that look like they've been tainted and twisted by their environment. That way, you're keeping people on their toes by putting more challenging enemies in the mix, while also having them really have to be aware of their surroundings. And I really do feel it makes perfect sense like this, right? Because look at these fungi. And then, more importantly probably, also look at these fungi. Imagine these growing all over a swamp, all different kinds, and they could all be part of the same system, all stemming from the same gross mat of mycelium buried beneath the mud. And because they're in a swamp covered by a canopy of branches, there's no sunlight that reaches the floor. They can't consume sunlight, so what do they eat? You. So they develop poisons that they can throw out in the air or maybe in the water, hoping that you fuck up and you make a mistake so that you die in the swamp and your body decomposes to feed all of those new plants. That kind of environment is so fucking scary because it's not like looking at a crocodile, seeing it and saying to yourself like, okay, that thing wants to eat me, so all I need to do is avoid it. It's being trapped in this place everywhere. All of the plants, all of the trees, everything growing in the mud, even in the air, everything around you wants you to die in that kind of swamp environment. If there's a ton of fungus and all these other plants that are poisonous and trying to kill you, it's because the environment wants to eat you. There's no animal there. There's nothing for you to fight. You just have to be insanely careful to not fall into the traps that nature has laid out for you. Upon editing those last few bits, I realized that I left that blood on my face for a bit too long, so my bad, but moving on. That kind of like almost parasitic fungal environment reminds me of a few different things, right? Like The Last of Us with the clickers. Freaking disgusting and creepy as hell. Also, this painting by Jason Felix called Fruiting Body just...
No, don't like that.
My only gripe with a lot of swamps and games is that I wish that poison stayed that way. I wish it stayed in the environment. Like I said before, in a lot of games, enemies in swamps will also deal poison damage, but I think it would be cooler if they were adapted to be immune to it and didn't spit it out themselves. Because while blobs and leeches are cool, you could get something like the Ooga Booga, the Bongo, the Gabagool. What the fuck are those things called? The Ogdos from Jedi Fallen Order. The artists say right up here that what they did was combine a frog and an alligator together. They're two creatures both from the swamps that when combined make for an insane enemy. What an evil design. Can you imagine you see a gator and just like before you're like, okay, I need to avoid it. Crazy. So yes, I do think that the environments in swamps should still be poisonous. I think that really, really works. I just think a lot of the creatures have the potential to be way cooler than a blob or a slug, which you see a lot. And like the Ogdos, I think you can make something challenging here without adding a bunch of damage over time effects. But please, by all means, feel free to make more insectoid designs. I always feel bad killing anything with a face because I obviously wandered into their territory, but bugs should all be murdered swiftly and without mercy. Not in real life, of course, because that's probably what's going to destroy the food chain and cause a complete ecological collapse on our planet, but enemy designs in swamps aren't the only things that I would like to see taken to new heights. I'm talking about the terrain. See, in wetlands, marshes, swamps, whatever, things need to be flat. Because obviously, some of the main traits of these areas are the puddles and the pools and the strange ladies lying in ponds distributing swords that form the foundation for a system of government. It's a very wet area, so you can't have hills and holes and hummocks because that's just not how real swamps are. But these are games. And what if there's a way to make swamps more interesting without sacrificing their key characteristics? Going back to Jedi Fallen Order, these environments all use that idea really, really well, and I do mean all of them. When I finally got to Dathomir, I was just like, oh, thank God, it's a dry desert planet. I'm so glad that I'm out of the swamps and the mud. Are you fucking kidding me? But anyways, the first planet that you visit is Bogano. And the designers had a problem. Referencing the handy dandy art book again, Respawn, because it's Respawn, needed to introduce wall running on this planet, and they didn't know how. It was a marsh, right? It was completely flat. So what they ended up doing was creating this landscape, this geology, that's kind of like an extreme version of dry cracked mud. So what you're left with are these isolated little plateau spires with swampiness, or technically marshiness, on top, but it's all separated by these giant chasms. They found a way to add so much to this environment that otherwise would have been a bit of a snooze fest. I think the thing that swamps lack that I love to see in everything is verticality. If you're a returning subscriber, you'll know that my favorite games are sandbox and building games. And in anything I make, I will always make it multi-layered with connecting bridges and tunnels just because it's so much more fun to move around that way. It adds whimsy and it offers so many new ways to get from point A to B. Working with different elevations just offers so much variety and really helps things never get stale. And going back to Jedi Fallen Order, Kashyyyk also has insane verticality. In fairness, it's a rainforest that reminds me more of the Zhangjiajie Give me a second.
涨价街，涨价街，涨价街，涨价街，涨价街。
That, those mountain ranges in China. But even when you're on the forest floor on this planet, there's always roots and canals, different things that make it so that you're always moving up and down. And again, the whole point of this area specifically is to climb this big ass tree, so it makes sense that it's always moving you upwards. But imagine in something like Valheim if you could find a cave like this. Or if beneath the swamp there was a whole labyrinth of dripping caves filled with gnarled roots and spooks. Now obviously, again, if you're going for realism, this isn't going to work because in a swamp the water table's at ground level, so things below the ground might not really make sense. But if you're willing to go the Dagobah route, then it would be really cool to see this implemented. And what if you want to add verticality in a swampy section, but you want it to be above ground? For that, we can go back to that swampy section of Dathomir. They add verticality here using these big rocks and temple ruins. So below you have tons of enemies and poison pools, and it's made crystal clear that you need to stay above ground level if you want to have a good time. I think having a multi-leveled feel like this is cool, but it's really easy in this case specifically to have your setting go from a swamp to a jungle if you add too much rocky elevation above the ground, you know? Whew. Day 5 of working on this video. If you're enjoying it, consider subscribing. It's my goal to have all of my videos be better than their predecessors, so hopefully I'll just keep getting better and better. But anywho, how would you add verticality to a swamp if you didn't want to use caves and adding too many rocks would ruin the atmosphere? There's still a whole world of possibilities with structures. Because again, this is stinky, icky, weird poo-poo land where nothing needs to really make perfect sense. Nobody's expecting a grand fortress or a bustling town in here, but what I am hoping to see are rickety, decrepit buildings on stilts. And with that, you can kind of do whatever you want. In Divinity Original Sin 2, which, really quick, by the way, is one of the best games I have ever played. Buy it full price, beat it, it's amazing, you won't regret it. But anyways, in the starting area of this game, there's an area called the Hollow Marshes, which is a swamp full of shipwrecks. And it seems like the weird dead things that live here have like haphazardly cobbled together these structures out of the wreckage of all those old ships. So you get these zones with tons of verticality and interesting layouts while still being in a completely flat swamp. And I feel like this just makes sense in a coastal swamp, right? Like you see a bunch of shipwrecks and just go, oh word, this place flooded at some point and I'm not going to question it. It works perfectly. Broken ships are the perfect material to work with if you're in a flat coastal area. I think Libertalia from Fallout 4 is one of the best executions of that idea. And in this art book, the designers say that just the idea is fun. And they're right. You can just throw sticks and planks on top of a boat and have a ton of fun with it, even if it would make zero sense in real life. And even if the spot isn't coastal, these structures still fit in super well. If I'm trying to survive in a swamp like this, where am I gonna go? In the trees. I can't stay in the water, my feet would get pruny. And if you're trying to live in the trees, you're never gonna chop them down because they're your strongest support beams. So you're gonna use twigs and branches, other little pieces, to make the same kind of rickety structures. And I won't bore you with the way that swamps and marshes form, even though I really want to, but one of the huge components here is that the soil basically does not drain. So when it rains and water from all the surrounding areas pools into this already submerged and not draining place, the water level rises really quickly. So it would also make sense to have multiple levels, so that inhabitants could retreat to the higher levels but come back down to fish and travel and shit. I would just love to see this more in swampy areas in any game. Of course, it doesn't always make sense to have people live in swamps. I mean, most people would just be like, yeah, no, I'm good, thank you though. But if there is going to be a swamp and there is potential for people to live there, put them up in the trees in a network of rickety shanty structures and it'll be sick as hell. It gives you somewhere totally new to go to get out of the mud and the water. And real ones know that just because you get to take some form of refuge in a series of creaky scaffolds, it doesn't mean that things still won't be an absolute fucking nightmare. With swamps, I just feel like they're either the most despised or most forgettable part of any game. And that really sucks, because they have certain attributes and characteristics that could make them one of the most interesting places to go in and explore. I hope with more games in the future, we see these things taken in a different direction to make them more exciting to discover and play through. So thank you for listening to my swampy seminar. I would really love to hear what you thought about it, your ideas for how swamps could be improved, or if you think that they're fine the way that they are. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, as always, a like would be very much appreciated. Thank you again for dropping by, and don't forget to subscribe if you already haven't so I can see you in the next one.